Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. GetDucks.com, your proven source for the very best waterfowl hunting adventures. Argentina, Mexico, 6 whole continents worth. For 2 decades, we've delivered real duck hunts for real duck hunters. And USHuntList.com, because the next great hunt is closer than you think. Search our database of proven U.S. and Canadian outfits. Contact them directly with confidence. Trust is earned. By the numbers, 121 waterfowl subspecies bagged on 6 continents, 20 countries, 36 U.S. states, and growing. I spend upwards of 225 days per year chasing ducks, geese, and swans worldwide. And I don't choose shotguns for their brand name or the cool factor. Y'all know me way better than that. I've shot Benelli for over 2 decades. I continue shooting Benelli shotguns for their simplicity, utter reliability, and superior performance. Whether hunting near home or halfway across the world, that is the stuff that matters. Sit means sit and stay until it doesn't. No matter how well or how often trained, retrievers want those ducks as badly as we do, maybe even more. Chardog might be titled, but she's still just a dog. I'm over 50 years old and I still do dumb stuff, trust me. Retrievers are family. I wouldn't endanger my children near heavy traffic, and I'm not going to risk my dog jumping in front of blazing guns either. Gundog Outdoors' patented quick-release safety system is fully adjustable, tethers to any blind or stand, has titanium stakes for frozen ground, and a quick-release marine-grade shackle to quickly release Fido when the smoke clears. Visit gundogoutdoors.com. Connect with them on Instagram at Gundog Outdoors to see their growing line of Gundog safety and performance products. Enter hashtag GetDucks to receive 15% discount off of your first order. Boss Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shot's come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever perform like good old-fashioned lead. Say goodbye to all that gimmicky, high recoil, compensation, science, hype, and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern, take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck Season Somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations. Welcome back to another episode of Duck Season Somewhere from Arizona. Man, you know, you come into the great state of Arizona from the north up in Utah, and it's just red rock formations. It looks a lot like the Grand Canyon to me, which you can see just over to your west. Of course, it's a 6-hour round-trip drive getting there. But it's amazing. Just imagine the most cinematic and amazing western scene you've ever seen. And that is what this part of the world looks like. As you go south, you start running into more and more desert. Saguaro cactus, less water. It looks like anything but a duck hunting destination. And as I drove down here, I reminded myself, you know, I've hunted the Sonora Desert down in Mexico before. I've shot a lot of birds in this environment. I met this morning John Odell, who is the Arizona Migratory Game Bird Coordinator and a heck of a duck hunter. We had a great time this morning with our friend Steve Comas from SCI. John, how are you today?
I'm awesome.
Was today pretty typical of your experience out there on the Salt River?
Yeah, so, you know, I think sometimes people get misled about duck hunting in general, the bag limits and all that, and, where, social media and those kind of things portray that, all the great days happen to everyone else but me because,
right.
Geez, I can only shoot 2 or 3 ducks. And these guys are shooting strapfuls and all that other stuff. But, when you look at national averages, here in Arizona, you look at national averages, the average duck hunter, it's about 2 ducks a day. That's a pretty average day for most guys.
Mm-hmm.
if you work hard and you scout and stuff and get yourself on the X and put in a lot of extra effort, yeah, you could probably get a limit. Find out exactly where to be. But yeah, an average day, that's pretty much what we experienced today. We saw a lot of ducks and
the setup and it was so different. I think it was different maybe even than what I expected, because we parked, we met, we suited up, we walked down this trail by headlight, and it's sand, it's cacti, it's cottonwood trees, and some other thick bushes, and we start just following this well-established path. We come out to this little river. There's cattails. It was notably cooler as you fell off just that little bit of decline. I mean, it was like real cool. It went from, I'm going to say, 65 degrees to 50 degrees, a 15-degree change, I'm going to say, just as we got down around the water. Hear a few ducks. Of course, you could hear the riffles and the white water coming through, and you pointed to a rock formation across the way and said, every duck hunter practically that hunts the Salt River knows that rock formation. We all hunt around here. We all do this, and that was just a real we threw out a few decoys. You had a real species selection of decoys. You did have a couple of mojos, and we set them out, and we backed off into the shadows, and there was quite a diversity of species. But what all species might you take in the state of Arizona in a situation like the Salt River?
It's sometimes it's hard to say. Part of it would be based on the time of year.
Mm-hmm.
If you're hunting, in the opener, the very opening day, you can definitely see blue-winged teal. That's kind of the tail end of them as they're passing by us on their way to Nayarit in Mexico and the big marshes down there. But on a day-to-day basis, part of it's dependent on the migration, how cold it is up north, what's being pushed down to us. But as you saw today, I mean, you just never know what's coming next. We saw redheads, we saw a wood duck, we saw green-winged teal, we saw
that wood duck probably followed me from Mississippi.
And so I always challenge guys. I say, you got to kind of rearrange your thinking instead of shooting a limit of greenheads. Maybe unless it's shovelers, but,
right.
But I defy you. I defy you to shoot 7 of the same ducks in Arizona. Like a good 7 duck day. If you were to shoot your full bag limit of 7 ducks, that's a great day. 7 ducks of the same species is like a red letter great day, just because it's so unusual for you to really fully get 7 of the same ducks. It's quite the challenge.
But you ran down a litany of species today: bufflehead, ringneck, scaup, canvasback, redhead, green-winged teal, sometimes blue-winged teal, cinnamon teal, mallards, gadwall, pintail, widgeons. You said a lot of widgeons were starting to show up in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big slug of species of birds all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's
Canada geese.
It's one of the benefits, I think, of Arizona that most people don't know about. If we were hunting Central Valley, California, immediately you would think pintails. That's where they all go. I mean, and there's gobs of them down to those rice fields and that.
Right.
If we were talking about Stuttgart in Arkansas, we'd be talking about mallards. Heavy numbers of those. You talk about Arizona, it's an absolute mixed bag of birds. Just varied amounts, different times of the year. We're a strange state in that way. When you think about it, I think if people were to kind of get an idea, Arizona definitely is more of a duck state than a goose state. We don't tend to see a lot of geese. The geese we do get the most of tend to be Canadas, and most of them actually are from Utah. That's where most of the geese harvested here come from. But, if you were to look at another desert state like Nevada and Arizona, both, very desert states, not a lot of water. You'd kind of maybe put us in the same category. The water in Nevada is very different than the water in Arizona. And there are a lot of birds killed in Nevada. A lot. But a whole different suite. Canvasbacks, redheads are very high on Nevada's list of annual take. Not so much here in Arizona. We're starting to see a rise in redheads, but like we stick kind of to the similar path of most states. The vast majority, the number one duck species harvested in Arizona is mallards, and part of that actually are Mexican ducks, the Mexican mallards.
That's a big duck for y'all Mexican ducks.
Yeah, it's here. It breeds here, and as well as winters here and everything. So that's pretty common for us to see those. Arizona is really kind of the guide-on bearer when it comes to Mexican duck management, or kind of the home base for that, and as well as New Mexico a bit too, and they have quite a bit on the Rio Grande Valley and the river there, but so we go number 1 mallards, number 2 green wings, number 3 widgeon, and widgeon has been growing. Widgeon actually has been going up the ranks in the past 10 years as we've seen the continental populations grow. It seems like even more of them, it's not like an equal distribution to everyone. It seems like a lot more of these ones that are growing are coming to Arizona more and more because it moved up from probably the 5th or 6th position now to number 3. Actually, a few years ago, it was very strange. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, the migration was bad. It stayed like northern Utah didn't even freeze. There was still open water out there, not just the Salt Lake, but a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so not a lot of birds that we typically see get pushed down with that cold weather. But however, widgeon came in mass, and it became our number 1 duck. It was the first time a duck overtook mallards as our number 1 duck species. And was really kind of neat to see. And there's nothing wrong with widgeons, boy. I'll take shooting widgeons, just as much as I think about any other duck on any given day. So, that kind of satisfied our need. We certainly didn't see as a lot of ducks or any of that, but we were all definitely getting widgeons that year. It was good to see. And then things kind of normalized again. But yeah, I mean, it's moved up from probably the 5th or 6th position now to number 3, right behind green wings, and it may overtake green wings in the future.
What struck me this morning? Yesterday I drove 12, 13 hours to get to Phoenix from Salt Lake City, thereabouts. And, you and I tried to have several conversations on the phone, and so much of the time, never mind, I could see all the way out to the curvature of the earth. I had very, very poor cell reception, and it was just like going through an untouched, and I know it's been touched, but I'm just saying at a glance, this rugged, wild, unbelievable environment. And I've been driving like that for 11 or 12 hours when I rolled into Phoenix at rush hour.
Yeah.
And about had a heart attack with 6 or 7 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic. And these people they drive a lot more aggressively than I do. And I'm staying here in this hub where you suggested around Mesa. And here's the most striking thing is how many people live in Phoenix? Millions, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Lots.
Over 6 million.
Over 6 million. And yet we're talking last night. You say, oh, well, look, we're just going to meet 15 minutes up the road. I'm expecting it to be kind of like out on the East Coast where you can see airports and cities and towns. And it's like I went about 10 red lights. They were all green this morning because it was 4:30 in the morning. And I went through green light number 10, and it went from city lights and suburbia to blackness.
Yeah.
All I could see was the headlights of my trucks, and I just sensed, and I could see by my GPS map there was no cities, no roads, no nothing. It was just blackness on this map, and it's all desert. It's all public land, and it's just like boom, abrupt.
Yeah.
And I could see on my GPS the Salt River run. I said, well, that must be where I'm going.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we dropped down that river, and you were telling me yesterday a lot about Arizona, the importance of water, because there's like the convergence of 4 deserts or something right here in Arizona.
Yeah.
Sonora being the largest. What are the other deserts?
Yeah, so Arizona in particular is known for the Sonoran Desert. That's the identifier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's marked by the saguaro cactus. The big tall trees with the arms.
Right.
That's Sonora.
Sonora.
It only grows in Sonora. Yeah, that's our trademark, kind of look. But the Sonoran Desert as well is the most lush desert you've ever seen on planet Earth. The diversity of plants and life and everything that exists in the Sonoran Desert is phenomenal. So it's confusing when people call it a desert because they think, it's just sand dunes and cactus and that's it.
Yeah.
But there is so much going on here. And so, yeah, Arizona is really unique because we're, dominated by the Sonoran Desert for about the southern half of the state. A little north of Phoenix all the way to the Mexican border is all that lower Sonoran Desert. On the north, we're the bottom end of the Great Basin Desert comes in. And that's what you drove through as you break over the Kaibab Plateau and you come around that corner, and then you see Vermilion Cliffs and House Rock Valley and that big crack in the earth that starts the Grand Canyon, where the Colorado River comes through is just, it's epically beautiful. I mean, it doesn't get any better. Then on the west side, the Mojave Desert, which comes in out of California and Death Valley and all that stuff, kind of invades in that northeast corner of the state. And then the Chihuahuan Desert from the eastern side from New Mexico comes in. And so you get a kind of this melding of Sonoran Desert with these other desert types as a transition. The Great Basin Desert is pretty much sagebrush. It's sage grouse country basically, and it just breaks off into something very different again as you move south. And the Chihuahuan Desert has a whole different suite of cacti and plant life and things like that, and it changes as you come in. And then the Mojave's very barren, very not a lot going on. I mean, that's
sand.
To me, yeah, Mojave is where when we think of deserts, that kind of Sahara type, like it's really kind of bleak out there. But that's you have Death Valley and those record high temperatures and everything else. So you got to be tough if you want to live in the desert. That's for sure.
That's right. Well, it was just very striking contrast, and yet there's a lot of ducks. There's a lot of public use, and Arizona has a lot of public land, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah. So that's an absolutely important part. So what most people don't kind of consider, because sometimes we just never get that far. We know Alaska's number one as far as a big state. You've got Texas, everything's bigger in Texas, all that stuff. Well, Arizona ranks pretty high. We're the 6th largest state in terms of landmass in the United States. And for anyone who's back east or in the Midwest or whatnot, what surprises a lot of people more is the fact that there's only like 15 counties in Arizona. Instead of like 90 or whatever. And they're like, what are you talking about, your counties? I'm like, we have counties that are actually bigger than some U.S. states.
I believe it.
And so, but yeah, there's a lot of empty space in between towns and stuff, but it's not vacant space. There's life there. There's things going on. But the 6th largest state, 60% of our state is public ground. And that's a mix of Bureau of Land Management, United States Forest Service, and state trust lands, which are open to hunting. I mean, 60%, that's huge. That 60% is bigger than a lot more states have in total area. 24% of the rest of that, 24% of the rest of the land is tribal lands or reservations, and about 16% private lands. So not a lot of private land here.
We heard a few shots from another hunter upriver.
Yeah.
And but it really wasn't a tremendous amount of hunting pressure. There were photographers, there were nature walkers, there were some people riding horses thereabouts. It was way different than Arkansas, Mississippi, but it was extremely enjoyable.
I was pretty impressed because I wasn't sure if who was more shocked, the photographers at seeing us or you about seeing the photographers?
I wasn't shocked to see a photographer, but they did stumble down the trail right on top of us and go, that's a little scary. Yeah, I think he said something. There was 3 people, what I presume to be a husband and a wife and a friend, and they all had 1.5 foot long lenses, and they walked right to the edge of our spread and stopped and looked and binoculared and looked through the mirror, and they sat there for 2 or 3 minutes and then walked away. I'm like, okay, that's different. And wow, that's just. But hey, it's their resource too. I get it, you know. And it was late in the morning. They weren't hurting anything. We were just by then just visiting and enjoying each other's company and had some pretty good conversations. Let's back up. Let me ask you this, John. Who are you? What I know what your title is, but where'd you come from? How did you get into hunting, and how did you end up briefly here as the migratory game bird coordinator?
Very, very long story, very long trip. Well, so I grew up in a hunting and fishing family in Montana, Western Montana, and pretty typical for that time, an era of the 70s and 80s. A lot more people were hunting at that time. I mean, this is way more common, I think, than it is today. And so it was pretty pretty normal. I mean, all the kids in we used to get the opener of deer season off from school. Like they just weren't open because they knew we were all going to be gone. Going to collect meat for the families and stuff. And it wasn't, for us, it was as a family unit, it was the immediate family. It was my grandparents, my dad, his two brothers, my uncles, their wives, kids and all that stuff. And Montana was very, I think a little bit more liberal with tags, for big game species, even back then, because I know a lot of times my dad didn't have a lot of leave time every year. He worked for the state, but, really had to just be wise with it. And so sometimes I remember a few years, he would buy tags for him and my mom and myself at the local independent grocer, the IGA grocery store in town. And he would take me to my grandparents' house, and he'd drop me off for a week or two and say, here's all our tags, fill up, and pay attention to Grandpa. He's going to teach you how to break these things down. I need you to learn these things. And so you know how to take care of stuff. And we were all about feeding family. I mean, the rule was that, you basically shot the first legal thing that came in. You weren't looking for antlers or anything else. But if a group came in, the rule was shoot the biggest one. Sure. We're trying to feed 13 people here for a long time. But, tags were a little easier to come by. I mean, they were over the counter. We'd get cow elk tags. We'd get, deer tag. I can't even tell you, being able as a kid to hunt whitetail in Montana that are so prized today. Like people talk about the Milk River and, hunting elk in the Missouri River breaks and all. I mean, I just did that as a kid. It was normal to me, but people really idolize these areas of Montana that they, I want to go do this. I was like,
sure.
I didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, I hunted Ted Turner's ranch as a kid.
Really?
The Flying D Ranch in Montana, because my grandfather used to punch cows with the ranch foreman, way back when they were young kids and stuff. And he's like, "Oh yeah, can I take my grandkid?" Oh yeah, sure. So I didn't know any different. I'm like, here's just another place to go hunt mule deer. And so I, to me,
did you hunt birds at all?
We did. We did a lot of duck hunting growing up. A lot of places, the Gallatin River, Madison River. We had a few lake hunts and stuff. There was an old farm. It was our family duck hunting spot. There was an old hay farmer that had access to a river, and my uncles and dad had been hunting it for years and all that, and it eventually, I came along. My two uncles had girls. They had daughters, and so I was kind of like the first boy. Maybe the baby boy of all the kids. And so it was like, I was tagging along as a young kid and just happy to be there. But most of the reason is because my dad, I always had labs. I always had dogs as a kid. And the dogs listened better to me than him.
Yeah.
And so they would be so happy to go grab ducks for me or fetch whatever, because I was just with the dog more, So it was like, all right, well, I got to bring the kid along so the dog will do what we needed to do. But eventually they were all three of those guys, my dad and my two uncles, they taught me a lot about hunting and fishing. And, my Uncle Mark was very much a fisherman, and so he taught me more of the ways of water. And my Uncle Don was definitely the big game guy. He really, pushed the stuff. And my dad was a little more, he was kind of a generalist, I think, like I am now, it was about the experience. It was about many things. I mean, I still remember the day he quit hunting. I was 14 years old, and we'd been hunting for a couple years, and, he'd let me borrow his very precious Winchester Model 70 and 270, the Jack O'Connor,
that's right, yeah,
influence rifle on his life. I mean, that's
mine too.
That was his gun, and I'd borrowed it a few times, and we were out there hiking around the mountains, and this beautiful deer steps out, bigger than anything. I still, I've never shot one that big to this day, but this big, beautiful deer steps out. And, it's Dad's go. And I just remember he pulled up the rifle and he's staring at it. And I'm just waiting for the trigger pull. I'm waiting for the bang. And it just doesn't happen. And he holds it, for well longer than a pause. And he just sat there for a minute. And I'm like, I'm like, are you going to shoot it? What's going on, Dad? He's like, he put the gun down. And he said, you know what? I'm done. I've done my job. You know how to hunt now. You know how to clean game. You can process. I said, well, still going to buy tags. You're gonna help feed this family. But, he grew up as a farm kid. And, the things that I learned about him later was, because I'd asked him about that moment. I'm like, he just stopped hunting at that point. And I talked to him about
the crosshairs on a buck of a lifetime.
Yeah. And he told me, he said, you know what? He's like, I grew up as a farm kid. I've done enough killing. And he said, but, it was important for me to teach you, the cost of dinner on the table and what it took and that respect of wildlife, And he really drove that home. Like I said, I took way more after my dad because he was the generalist. He didn't have a thing, Like I said, my Uncle Mark was a fisherman. Uncle Don, he was the big game guy. Dad just kind of enjoyed all the outdoors. And but he really, he instilled in me that whole idea. He said, you know what, I've done enough. I've passed it on to you. And he said, he loved venison and elk and everything else, and said, I'll buy tags and you can get them for me. But he said, I just, he used to have to slaughter chickens all the time, and they'd run the hogs, and I think he reached that point. He's like,
how old do you think he was thereabouts?
Oh, let's see. I was 14, so he must have been, that was around 1991. So he was almost 50 at that point.
They're about 50.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a great story, by the way. True or false? You are famous for something unique in the hunting world.
I'm famous and infamous for a lot of things.
Famous and infamous. But this morning when you told me your Instagram handle, I go, huh? And you spelled it, and I go, is that what I think it is? I hadn't heard that word in 30 years when I was in school learning scientific names.
Right.
What is your claim to fame?
So my claim to fame is I'm the first known person to have taken the U.S. slam of tree squirrels. and I did it all in one season. Not only did I take them all, but I did it all in one season.
What squirrels did that involve?
So that's all 8 tree squirrel species, the ones that are considered game animals within the United States. And so you have 6 what we call the big squirrels, which are Cyrus, which is what my handle is, a Cyrus Hunter on Instagram. Cyrus are the 6 big squirrels, and then there's 2 small squirrels called the Tamaya Cyrus. Mm-hmm. And their name stems from a little different thing, but Cyrus means shade tail.
Okay.
Did
not know that.
That's the Greek translation of Cyrus. But so the big squirrels are the eastern fox squirrel and the eastern gray squirrel. A lot of people just know them as gray fox or gray and fox squirrels. Mm-hmm. But there are more. Then you have the Abert squirrel or the tassellared squirrel, which it's sometimes called. You have.
Where's he?
So he's only here in the Four Corners states.
Okay.
Arizona, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. He's an obligate of the ponderosa pine forest. And the largest stand of ponderosa pine is up there on the Colorado Plateau. Here in the United States, it's the most largest and contiguous stand of ponderosa pine, and they're obligates to that. You have the Mexican fox squirrel, or Nayarit fox squirrel, sometimes, and that's out of the Sierra Madres, which is the big mountain range south in Mexico. But there is one extant population that exists in southeastern Arizona, only in one mountain range, and so there's that one, and then we have the Arizona gray squirrel, which is pretty much only Arizona and New Mexico. Mm-hmm. It was essentially deposited after the Wisconsinian ice sheet had retreated from, because the last ice age came all the way down here, and as it was retreating, it deposited species in a weird kind of pattern, and the Arizona gray squirrel, which is a misnomer. So the Arizona gray squirrel looks like a gray squirrel, like an eastern gray squirrel, but it's actually a fox squirrel. based on its dentition. It has the fox squirrel dentition, and also it acts like a fox squirrel, but looks nearly very close to an eastern gray squirrel. Then you have the western gray squirrel, which is that coastal one up in the Sierras in California. Really, really awesome squirrel. It's more silver than it is gray. Kind of a different, like the Columbia silver, I guess is what they call it. And then you have the other two, the small squirrels. You have the red squirrel, or fairy diddles, or timber squeakers, or there's about 100 different names because they're pretty widely distributed across the country, even in the Appalachians and Minnesota and stuff. But you have the red squirrel, and then you have its cousin, which is the Douglas squirrel, which is also in the Sierra Nevadas. And those two are more mixed conifer, spruce fir forest type squirrels, really high elevation or high latitude.
And you actually went, who knew, to a world champion squirrel cooking contest one time. Is that in Arkansas?
I compete in a lot of wild game cook-offs.
Yeah.
I haven't gone pro yet fully, but it is something I really enjoy to do. There's the World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off is of course it's held in Bentonville, Arkansas, the home of Walmart. Where else would you have the World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off? So I actually met so through the wildlife profession. This was really funny. In the squirrel world, right? The hardcore squirrel hunters. We're an entire subculture, counterculture to mainstream. And in that world, there's not a lot of I don't know. I would say I have idols, in that squirrel hunting. You hear mention of people, you're like, oh, okay, here's this interesting guy. Well, the one thing about squirreling, if you're a really dedicated squirrel hunter, you may have heard of the Jackson squirrel rifle.
I never have. I'm not that guy.
So it's the Ferrari of 22 rifles. It is incredibly expensive, incredibly accurate, beautiful, beautiful gun. And it doesn't come with a scope, and it's very expensive. You have to scope it yourself. It's pretty serious. But yeah, it is the top of the line 22. People will look at you like you're crazy for buying a 22 that costs this much. But it usually comes with exhibition grade Claro walnut. It is a spectacular, beautiful piece. Well, if you learn the whole story of that gun, it boils down to a man named Clifton Jackson, who is in Arkansas. And so Cooper, who used to work at Kimber Firearms in Oregon, left Kimber back when Kimber was doing a lot of the custom early guns and all that other stuff. He started his own company, Cooper Firearms, in Montana, and really wanted to make accurate, great quality guns and all that stuff. Well, when he was first starting out, he was at a gun show in Arkansas, just kind of showing his wares. Here's what I can do, really nice custom guns for you and stuff. He ran into Clifton Jackson. Well, Clifton was talking to him, and he said, "Man, you don't have a 22. That's what I do. I squirrel hunt, man. I need a 22. You're just making centerfire rifles." And the guys, they were talking. They said, "Man, God, I haven't been squirrel hunting in years, and this, that, and everything. just kind of chit chatting back and forth." And Clifton invited. He's like, "Well, are you going to be here for a couple of days? Why don't you come squirrel hunting with me? I got extra guns. We can go out and all that stuff." So he takes him out. I think somewhere on the White River, or near the White River, and so they go squirrel hunting. Cooper, he had a blast. All the guys had a blast. They hadn't been squirreling since they were kids. They forgot how fun it was,
Absolutely.
They get back to the gun shop in Montana. They said, "You know what? For Clifton, we're going to make him a 22, right? We're going to make him a great squirrel gun." And they did. And they shipped it to him. Said, "Hey, there's a package on its way to you, man." And so he opens it up, and he's like, "Wow," and they call him, "Well, how do you like it?" He's like, "It's okay." And he's like, what do you mean it's okay? He's like, well, it's obviously it's a beautiful gun. You put a lot of work into it and stuff, but for a squirrel gun, it's not, it's probably not what I would do, for a good quality squirrel gun. And he's like, well, what would you do? And so Clifton started naming off all these features about things he would do to build the perfect squirrel gun. And Cooper was writing everything down.
Wow.
I mean, to the T. So he gets off the phone with Clifton. He goes back to the drawing board, builds the gun to specifications that Clifton had recommended to him. Shipped him the new gun. Said, here you go. It's now the Jackson squirrel rifle. And any Cooper firearm now actually comes in the Jackson package because it's Monte Carlo, stock and beaver tail forend and all these different things. So it's an option for actually a lot of their guns, and it's become very popular for centerfire guns as well that they sell. So what he, eventually that just became the Jackson squirrel rifle. And so I'd heard about this for a long, like I had heard the story, like bits and pieces. I didn't have the whole story that I just told you. But I knew the Jackson squirrel. I knew Clifton Jackson. I'm like, this guy's somebody. Like, he's important.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm at a quail meeting in Texas. I was in the small game biology time working on quail. And so I had this meeting. I was representing the Western Quail Working Group, meeting with the National Bobwhite Technical Committee in Texas. And really big meeting. And so, like, lots of people that were foreign to me, a lot of the Southeastern guys. Because bobwhites just aren't here. It's not my bird, but I'm interested. I want to sit in on meetings and all that stuff. So we get to the first evening after meetings and stuff, and they had free drink tickets at the hotel. And this guy comes up and he introduces himself. He's like, "Hi, my name's Clifton Jackson." And my mind, like, all of a sudden, like the rust started coming loose, and the gears were turning. I'm like, wait a minute. And so this is after I'd done the squirrel slam. And I'm like, you're not the Clifton Jackson from Arkansas. And he goes, that's me. And I'm like going, dude, like, you were my hero. I got to buy you a drink. Like, I so wanted to meet you. He's like, are you kidding me? I've wanted to meet you. He's like, I can't believe you did the squirrel slam. That's, more. So we became friends and all that other stuff, but had long conversations. And he's like one of the greatest human beings. And he's actually the small game biologist for Arkansas,
Okay.
Hey, Arkansas, like, honestly, your small game biologist is a pretty famous dude and really awesome. But so after that convention or after that meeting, we stay in touch and hit each other up through Facebook or email every once in a while. And I got this message from the Wall Street Journal one day. I just, have some Google searches out there. If something shows up, it pings me with something. And so I see this thing from the Wall Street Journal that I got pinged for that said squirrels. I'm like, what are squirrels doing in the Wall Street Journal? Open it up. Full story about the second World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off. I'm like, the second World Championship Squirrel Cook-Off. I missed the first and the second. And I had no idea. So I called Clifton. I'm like, Clifton, how in the world did you not tell me? Because then I read in the story that Clifton was a judge.
Oh.
For Eden. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I'm so mad at you right now. I'm like, how do you not think that I want to come do that? And he's like, yeah, you're probably right. I should have told you about it. He's like, I didn't know if it'd get past the first year or not. And it has, and it's grown, and it's pretty spectacular. So I went to the third, and then I went to the fourth.
Well, what did you cook?
So the first year that I went, which was the third, I cooked, I was the only guy cooking Abert squirrel. I was the furthest western team. I think there was 40 teams from 19 states that year. And I was the furthest west. I cooked Abert squirrel, but I had made Ardillas Verde de Sonora, which is
sounds Mexican.
So it was a dish I invented that's basically green chili squirrel enchiladas, but they're Sonoran style. So they're not rolled in tortillas. In Sonora has very few corn dishes because corn just never grew in Sonora. So they actually make masa cakes, flat kind of cakes, and then they stack them and cover them in like sauce with meat, and then top it off with cheese and all that stuff. So that was the first dish I cooked. I won third place that year, and I was actually competing against restaurant chefs that year, and so I was pretty proud. I called it a first place for myself, man. I was going against legitimate chefs there, and so it's an incredible event. Joe Wilson, who runs it, guy is a saint himself. He's out there in Arkansas. I found my tribe. Like, that's the whole thing. I just never really knew where I fit in when I was in Montana, or Montucky as I sometimes refer to it. Like, I was just kind of the weird kid, because I was in big game land. Out here in the West, it's big game world, and so like my dad wouldn't even let me waste a bullet shooting a squirrel when I was a kid. He's like, we're trying to feed people. Stop. We're not going to waste bullets on little squirrels and stuff. But I made it to Arkansas, and like I was surrounded by squirrel hunters for the first time in my life. People who like loved it, did it as much as I did, and all that stuff. And not that we do that exclusively. We still hunt deer and all those other things, but we love squirrel hunting, and it's something I've kind of often found. So like I felt home. Like these are my people. Like this is where I should have been the whole time, because for a long time, I guarantee you, like I could pick up. I think I was really frustrated for a long time because I could pick up 10, 15, 20 years worth of Outdoor Life magazines, Field and Stream magazines, anything that was out there. And what I learned about squirrel hunting was two things in all those years when I'd open up and look through them. I learned that you should shoot squirrels in the head. Duh. Legitimately, that was the article. The whole point of it, shoot them in the head. Or that squirrel hunting was good for young kids or nostalgic old men. And here I was, in my 30s, in my 40s now, but there I was in my 30s, loving squirrel hunting, and there wasn't a home for me in the mainstream hunting culture when it came to squirrel hunting. Like there wasn't anything that was speaking to me directly about it. And then, I got to Arkansas. And I found out that there are more of me out there. Like I wasn't an oddball. I wasn't, the odd man out. And it was, we just, the camaraderie and the fun and like after the cook-off, we went back to Joe Wilson's place. He had a big barbecue afterwards, and we hung out. And then the next day, like a bunch of us got together and went squirrel hunting in Arkansas, just to say we did. And I actually got to hold and see the original Jackson squirrel rifle 0001, serial number, and just really impressed with the whole thing. Like it was awesome. That community is just alive and well, and but in the shadows, for most hunters.
Your dad viewed hunting as a source of meat to feed a family.
Yep.
Don't waste bullets on squirrels.
Sure.
And you found your tribe in squirrel hunting, but more importantly in your career, as we talked about this morning, you've been with Arizona DNR for 15, 20 years, and small game is kind of your domain. Not just ducks. We'll talk about it in a minute, but small game. And you're very passionate about small game.
Yeah.
Beyond your personal interest of young boys and nostalgic old men, beyond that, you're very passionate, and you've kind of paved the way and done some things for small game here in the state of Arizona.
I have. Well,
Why?
I hope my reach has even gone further than that.
Good.
Because so, when I started with the department, I think everyone has an idea of what it's going to be like to be a wildlife biologist or work with wildlife,
That reminds me of a meme I saw one time, what my mama thinks I do, what my boss thinks I does, what I really do.
Yeah, well, I talk to a lot of students. I go back to the university just to prove that Arizona State University graduates actually do get jobs and they can,
Right.
I have to prove to some of the students that no, trust me, just trust the process. You'll actually get a job when this is over. I mean, Arizona State has a bad reputation as a party school instead of a get job school. But so the thing of it is I talk to these students and well, what do you want to do and all that stuff, and I hear the gamut. I mean, some of them are like, oh, I want to work with the big cats or bears or the I don't know, call them the glamorous, sexy species or whatever, like there's I really love raptors and eagles and all our stuff. And those, it's cool because wildlife has a place for you, like it doesn't matter what your interest is. There are a ton we've got fish heads, we've got bat people, we've got, any weird, strange species that you just happen to find exciting. There's a place for you, a home for you, You may not start there, but take the steps and eventually you'll get there. But for me, like I said, I just really was a generalist kind of at the outset. And I actually found squirrel hunting here in Arizona in college. when I hadn't been drawn for deer or whatever for a few years in a row, and I couldn't figure out the draw system. I was still pretty new to it, but a buddy of mine suggested it to me, and one day he's like, why don't you go squirrel hunting? I said, man, I don't know what I'm doing squirrel hunting. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, it's easy. And we pulled out a map and he pointed to a spot. He said, just go here. You'll see squirrels, I guarantee. And I said, okay, I'll go check it out. And I had that moment. Like I was kind of dejected and frustrated, I think, with hunting at that point too, because I saw far too many people who were concerned about the size. It was all about a score.
Yeah.
How big something was. How
heavy the strap. How big the antlers.
Yeah.
How many social media likes I get.
Sure. And then all of a sudden I go squirrel hunting, and I have like the greatest day hunting squirrels. There wasn't anything about size or antlers or appendages or whatever. It felt like being a kid again. Mm-hmm. And that enjoyment and that excitement I had for hunting, just like, coming back to me. And this is what it was about. And so, when I started my career, I was really a generalist there as well. I was helping out. I got hired into the game program here in Arizona, and I was more kind of a rover, like help wherever you're needed. It could have been a pronghorn project this week. It could have been bighorn sheep next week. It could have been, coyotes or whatever it was, banding doves or whatever. And so I did that for a while, but I started to really develop an interest in what was going on in small game because it was so different. There were aspects of it that I really liked, and aside from my own personal fascination,
there wasn't a lot of attention being paid to it in a state like Arizona.
No, there was. I mean, Arizona is known for elk and mule deer. Yeah. That's probably desert bighorn sheep to some people, but that's it's not uncommon to see these pictures of gargantuan mammals being harvested here. Mm-hmm. Arizona sells this. It's like the Cadillac. If you're stepping onto a car lot, it's not hard to sell Cadillacs. Arizona has a lot of big elk, no doubt.
Oh yeah.
And boy, do they harvest it. And people are like, man, I want to hunt Arizona someday. I want to, see if I can get me one of those big elk too, But what I discovered about Arizona is, as you dig deeper into this state, Arizona has the highest biological diversity in North America. The center of biological diversity. And what that means is the number of species, not only of plants, but of animals, but of a variety of things. It all centers, the entire North American continent centers on Arizona, and then it radiates out from there. We don't see this high of biological diversity until you reach Central America again, where there's, jungles and warmer temperatures and a very, very different environment. So there's a lot of species here. I mean, Arizona, I started, as you start to discover and look around, I mean, Arizona has 5 native quail species. 5.
Wow.
We have 4 native tree squirrels. We have 4 skunk species. We have just a variety of things that, really the outside world doesn't know. They know us for elk and mule deer, but I would argue that Arizona actually probably is the coolest and best small game state. Mm-hmm. In terms of the diversity here. 3 different subspecies of cottontails, 2 jackrabbits. It runs the gamut.
Unbelievable. A lot of endangered species, a lot of
we have endemic species that are only found here. We have rare species. We have threatened endemics. We have it runs the gamut of things. But in terms of the things that you can hunt, mm-hmm. like it's impressive. The list here. And strange species. I mean, stuff like coatimundes and ringtail cats. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like, yeah, these are like cool, crazy species you have here. And, but also Arizona is a great place for migratory birds. Arizona is really, in terms of the Western United States, particularly for doves. If you talk about dove hunting, there's really only 4 or 5 states that really only ever come into the conversation mm-hmm. in terms of numbers and abundance and all that other stuff. And it would be California, Arizona, Texas, and Louisiana.
Wow.
Like we are the monsters because there are a lot of birds here, a lot. And opening day on September 1st is epic in all these. Arizona actually, incidentally, has some of the highest densities. Texas has a lot more birds. I will give Texas that. They have a lot more birds, a lot more hunters. They're a much bigger state. And they also actually, have been growing food for them and raising them and doing all that other stuff. But Arizona, when you look at historically, you look at the counts and everything we've done here, the density of birds in this bird conservation region of Arizona are the high. Fish and Wildlife Service didn't believe it for years. They thought we were doing the counts wrong. There's no way someone has this high of density of birds. Mm-hmm. And so, but it's like, eventually they find, like one pair of birds in Arizona has between 5 and 6 nests every year.
Well, Steve Combs this morning, who I've hunted with in Mexico, said that because of what you're talking about, that density, that the white wing every 3 to 4 years, but the dove hunting in general rivals Mexico. It may be better than Mexico in the good years.
Well, and going back in history, Arizona used to have, really high bag limits of doves in really the first half of the century, almost leading into the 60s. It was white wings were 25 a day. And that was very common. We were, let's just harvest birds because it's everywhere.
Tell everybody real quick about Yuma, Arizona. I showed up gonna duck hunt for 2 or 3 mornings here in Arizona. Scratch it off my bucket list. It's just a big old desert.
Yeah,
there's more of the world to see. And before lunch, I added about 4 or 5 more bucket list hunts I've got to come back for. Yuma being one of them.
Yuma, yeah. So Yuma really, and I may sound partial because I'm the biologist here and all that, but truly, 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 Yuma is the closest thing you'll get to Argentina, probably in the United States as a whole.
Why? Talk about the
tradition. It is the premier dove hunting destination within the United States. Mm-hmm. For one, it's absolutely perfect. The way Yuma is constructed and built, Yuma actually is the winter vegetable capital of the United States. If you're eating a salad any time between November and March, that lettuce came from Yuma, anywhere in the country. And so, but there's a lot of ag, there's a lot of farm there. And the Colorado River runs through Yuma. And so in terms of a dove's life cycle, you basically have the Colorado River, which is where they get their water. And the Gila River actually also comes in right there, is a confluence there. So all that low floodplain land is all sediment. It's all sediment from the Colorado. So it's actually some of the richest soil that you'll find in the lower 48 states, because it's everything coming out of the Rockies from Colorado and Utah and on its way down as it's deposited there in Yuma. It doesn't look like black soil like typical farmers think in the Midwest. It's not black. This stuff is tan. It's grainy.
More like
but
cotton
it's
sand.
Really nitrogen rich, and grows a ton of stuff. So all that ag land in that floodplain is, their food source. And then on above the floodplain, which is what we call on top of the mesa, is all citrus orchards. Mm-hmm. It's all citrus. So all their roosting, their nesting, and so birds nest in these things in really ultra high densities because there's an abundance of food and water. And all they have to do is leave the roost every day, fly down, eat, get a drink at the river and all that stuff. And so when September 1st comes around, you're just going to stand in the ag field, and the birds are going to come straight to you, on their way on their daily cycles and in giant flights before they migrate out and go down south. So
and a lot of people in this part of the world seem to know about the Yuma opener. I just learned. I will be there at some time. I want the T-shirt. But the economic stimulus from opening weekend was just mind-boggling.
Yeah. The dove season in Yuma. So essentially, Yuma is a city of, I want to say it's about 70 or 80,000 people in the greater Yuma area. Farmers, town, that kind of stuff. But opening weekend, that city grows by probably about 15 to 20,000 people.
Wow.
Just dove hunters. Some in California, some from Arizona, some from faraway states, Alaska, Michigan. People have been coming to hunt the Yuma opener as a tradition for years, sometimes decades. And it really, I heard about the Yuma experience a long time. I'd heard the hype for a long time, but I always questioned it. I'm like, why would I drive 3.5 hours to go shoot doves when I can shoot them 15 minutes from my house? Like, that just seems ridiculous. And so I became the small game guy. And I was like, you know what? I guess I'm just going to have to go check out Yuma for myself, because I would call the Yuma guys and say, hey, how's the season look this year? You know, I'm putting together an outlook, a forecast for hunters to know what's going on. I said, you know, how's the dove season in Yuma? And they'd respond and be like, you know, probably like last year. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not giving me much here. Like, you know, I mean, like, there's this hype about Yuma. And they're like, you know, probably like last year. So I realized that I was looking forward at calendars, and I realized that opening day was going to be on a Saturday or a Friday or Saturday, which are big because you've got Labor Day on Monday. And so it's a longer weekend. And you know, when you have a Friday or a Saturday opener for doves, like, a lot of people can go out and have a great time and all that stuff. So I said, we need to go down this year and, you know, let's do like a photo essay and just kind of give people an idea about what it's at. We'll put it in our magazine and, you know, kind of just, you know, do some advertising. Because like I said, I hadn't been down there. I hadn't seen it. I stole the photographer, our department photographer. We went down there, and I just died. I was like, what am I seeing? This is insane.
Describe what you were seeing.
Every marquee sign. It didn't matter whether it was for Arby's or the hotel, or there were ADOT signs. There were Department of Transportation, those light up signs that they put on the side of the road for road construction. Welcome dove hunters. Welcome to Yuma. I was like, what twilight zone did I just walk into? Budweiser signs, you know, welcome. I mean, all the things that you see, like, there were banners hanging from telephone poles that the city had put up, welcoming people to Yuma. I'm like going, what is, like, this city is incredibly welcoming to hunters. Like, this is kind of insane. And there were gobs of people. And I mean, more like people who go hunting and don't like to see people close to them, this is going to make them feel like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Right. They're like, oh my God, you know, it's very stressful, but everyone was happy. Like, there wasn't like fights over, like, there's more than enough doves.
Dove hunting is a very social sport anyway.
Well, there's more than enough doves. Like, you don't have to have a 600-yard space circle around you. Like, they're going to come in massive waves, you know. Just shoot your little lane, and, you know, you'll get your limit. It's, you know, maybe you won't finish until 8:30 instead of 8 o'clock,
right?
You know, like, because it happens fast. And but it's this wonderful. It's the experience, and that's what I realized about Yuma. It wasn't necessarily the hunting, because I've got good dove hunting in a lot of places here in Arizona. Like I said, 15 minutes here from my house here in Phoenix, outside the Phoenix area, I've got great dove hunting. But it was about that experience and the way the town really opens its arms, welcomes people in. Like, as a hunter, these are not experiences we're accustomed to anymore. I remember it maybe as a kid in some of the rural towns, like, you would see the Budweiser sign outside the gas station where it would say, hey, you know, welcome hunters, and whatever was on sale, you know. But this whole town, like, really, like, you go into the restaurant and the waitresses are wearing camouflage T-shirts, and you get a welcome packet some years when you go down to the hotel rooms. You know, you show up, like, oh, you're here for the dove hunt. Here's your package. And it's got information and coupons and little tchotchkes and, you know, everything you need to know about dove hunting in one little bag. And so the Board of Tourism and the Chamber of Commerce are involved. I mean, this town really embraced hunting as an economic driver to their own economy. That opening season, I've read through some of the old reports and all that stuff. Just that opener has a $6 to $7 million economic impact on that city.
Wow!
Just from all those people coming in, because they're all buying gas, they're staying in hotels, they're eating in the restaurants, they're, you know, whatever. Go shoot birds for a couple hours in the morning. You're done. Go hop in the pool. Hey, go around town. Maybe do a little shopping. You know,
go to the big breast contest.
Oh yeah, and absolutely the big dove breast contest is where it's at, man. Yeah. That to me is the key to everything. Like, that's what I love is the fact of everyone wearing the big breast contest. Now, before y'all start getting mad at me for talking about the big breast contest, there's nothing nefarious with this. What we're talking about is dove breasts. But of course, we recognize there's a double entendre there.
Yeah.
And so what Sprague Sporting Goods, Richard Sprague, who his father started this sporting goods store in Yuma, and now he's taken it over and just done tremendous with it. It's kind of the central hub of that whole dove hunt. because it's where guys buy their ammo. It's where they get their licenses and stamps and, any extras they need, whether it's a vest, a dove vest, or a shade hat or whatever. But if you bring in your dove breast, bring in the breast from your biggest bird from the opening day and then up to noon on the second day, so you can submit 2 birds. Just for submitting, you get a raffle ticket. Just for bringing in a bird, even if it's not the biggest that they ever measure or whatever that they weigh out, you get a raffle ticket for a Benelli shotgun.
Wow. Okay?
Now, if you are one of the winners, they have first place, second place, and third place. Like the first place person gets I don't even remember now, like $1,000 gift certificate shopping spree in Sprague Sporting Goods. Second place gets like $500 and third place gets $300.
Wow.
And that's all just for hunting doves. And when you're at Sprague's, there's the Yuma Catholic High School 100 gun raffle you can buy tickets for, and there's the local car club who's they've got a hot rod that they're auctioning off or raffling off that you can buy $20 tickets for. It's kind of that old school stuff that I felt like I grew up with. Like people who a lot of us have to try and hide being hunters or who we are. Like, okay, don't wear camo when you go into the grocery store, or whatever. But this town completely welcomes it in open arms, and it's so awesome. And if you are there, you have to get the Big Breast Contest shirt from Sprague's. Mm-hmm. A lot of women feel uncomfortable about wearing it because then they make them think that they've been in some wet t-shirt contest or something. But honestly, so the shirt marks every year that they've done it, and it's been over 30 years now.
Wow.
The big years. So when you're in Yuma, look around at the other hunters, that you see, because the older your shirt is, that's kind of more like street cred and clout that you have, because you have Richard will always wear shirt number 1 on opening day. Mm-hmm. So there's not many people who still have shirt number 1 and shirt number 2, but Richard does. And so he wears both of those shirts during that kind of first couple opening days. And so it's kind of neat to see because the original shirts weren't as highly developed, I think, as they are today. But, because you're hunting in Yuma in farm ground, it's private ground, it's farmland, but a lot of the farmers, the Arizona Game and Fish Department works with, and we secure access, and they work with us, and there's cleanups, scheduled and all that stuff for shot shells. We want you to pick up your own shot shells, but we still clean up for those farmers because we want, to keep everything good. But as an honorarium to those farmers and those farms, Yuma actually became famous for their vegetables in the 1930s and 1940s. Because on the vegetable crate labels that came from Yuma, they all had pinup girls on them. Mm-hmm. Just drawings of pinup girls, with whatever farm, cabbage or, melons or whatever.
Just imagine the melons.
And so there's these pinup girls. And if you go to the Farm Bureau, actually in Yuma, they actually have every single crate label that was produced out of Yuma. And so you get to see all these pinup girls. Well, Richard decided that, as kind of an honorarium to honor Yuma's history and those farmers and who really are the superstars in all this for allowing us to hold these hunts on their lands and really kind of almost in town for the most part. Every 5th year they go and they select one of the pinup girls from the past, and then develop a design with her in it. Typically with doves flying around or, sitting on hay bales and Big Breast Contest, whatever, and things like that. And the every 5th year, those shirts are they sell like hotcakes because everybody wants one because they're only done every 5th year. And so, as we come up on the 35th anniversary, I think here soon, that'll be a pretty epic one. And they're really just some of the neatest shirts. And it's kind of a cool tradition that's gone on for years and years. And so to me, it's fun. Like I said, there's nothing nefarious or misogynistic about the whole thing. We're just talking about dove breast, but yeah, there is that double entendre. And that's what I think, people kind of get crosswise with it, but it still has that old school small town feel, but as a hunter, you're welcome, in a place that you may have never been before or whatever, but people continue to come year after year for decades. Their whole family. There was a family at the steakhouse guys from like friends and family from all over the country, all eating together. They had to clear out the entire banquet room so everybody could sit there, and there was 50 or 60 people. All one group. They all, the boy, the eldest, the patriarch of the whole thing, started it and started bringing the boys when they were little, and then it's they've married and moved on, but they all come back to Yuma. It seems like for the opener every single year. So it's really kind of neat. They're bringing their families and other kids, and just really spectacular to see.
Well, like I said, I came here to shoot a few ducks, but Yuma, Arizona tops the list of my personal bucket list destinations now. Based on this morning, it just sounds like my kind of environment. I just imagining going into a Mayberry-like family atmosphere with a whole lot of friendly hunters shooting doves.
20,000 of your closest new friends.
Yeah, 20,000 of my I'll find my tribe in Yuma.
Sure.
But, hey, folks, y'all have been listening to John Odell, Arizona Migratory Game Bird Coordinator. Come back next week for round 2. See you then.